Third down and 20.
What's up, guys? Welcome to another episode of the 3rd and 20 Dynasty Podcast. We've got a special one for you. We did a rookie mock draft a couple weeks ago. We're coming back at you with a totally different one. We're just going straight off prospects. It's a 2-round Superflex tight end premium rookie mock draft. I mean, I think we can all agree this is kind of the way of the future. You want to make quarterbacks more valuable, so that's where you're getting the Superflex involved. You know, and you're also trying to keep tight ends bumped up with everyone else. So that's why we got tight end premium. I just think it's the best way for you to run a dynasty league. I mean, that's my opinions. I think everyone else here agrees, but yeah, I'm excited. How you guys doing?
Great to be back, JT. Great to be back, and I am excited to get this mock going.
Yeah, me too, man. I'm doing great. We got thank God it's Friday now, and then we got the AFC and NFC championship games this weekend, which I'm excited for. But now I'm doing well.
Big mockers over here.
Yeah.
All right, let's just hop right into it. So the way it's going to work is we're going to snake it a full 2 rounds. Lounis is going to go first, followed by myself, then JT, then Frank. And like I said, Frank's going to have them pick 5 because we're snaking. So, Lounis, kick us off, pick 1.
So pick 1, as I did the last mock draft, ton of consideration into this. I took Trevor Lawrence. Once again, like we said in our previous mock, do not overthink this pick. I don't know which fantasy writer did it. JT sent us an article where someone's like, "Oh, I'm going to be bold and take Fields." I think Fields will be good, but don't fuck this up. If you have the number 1 pick in a Superflex draft, whether quarterback's your biggest need or not, you take Trevor Lawrence. And if you really don't need a quarterback, then you get a haul for the pick. But number 1 should be Trevor Lawrence, regardless of your team.
Apparently, according to that guy, the ceiling of Justin Fields is higher than the ceiling of Trevor Lawrence, and they have the same floor. And this is fantasy football. Bold take.
It's so dumb. It's not even like Trevor Lawrence can't run. He's still pretty good at running. So I didn't understand that at all. But no, this anyone is in this, don't overthink it. Just lock the pick in right now.
I guess my question to you is, coming into the league, where does he immediately rank amongst QBs? Before ever playing a snap, what's his QB rank in a dynasty league?
Probably 11.
I can't put him in the top 10.
I think he's like,
Not yet.
I have Baker Mayfield at, he might be 12 or 13. I have Baker Mayfield at 13 in tier 4, a spot behind Ryan Tannehill at 12. I think he should be slotted, Burrow I have at 11, Rodgers at 10, so probably somewhere around there I think is pretty fair.
Yeah, makes sense to me. I have him around there as well, maybe slightly higher, maybe just above Baker, behind Rodgers for now, but pretty close in ranking. So moving on, at pick 2, I took the guy that Lounis just touched on. I took Justin Fields. Obviously, I think he has a massive upside as well. I'm not going to say take him over Trevor Lawrence because that's just, to quote Stephen A., that's blasphemous. But Justin Fields has a lot of running upside, good arm, good accuracy. He's going to have a nice home wherever he lands. Maybe it's the Jets. Maybe it's someone that trades up into that second spot in the draft. But overall, I'm not concerned. I think wherever he lands, he will produce.
Yeah, I like that pick. I've said before, I think the gap between Justin Fields and Trevor Lawrence is definitely a smaller gap than, Justin Fields to either Trey Lance or Zach Wilson, whoever you have at 3. I just think he's such a great prospect and someone that if Trevor Lawrence hasn't been at Clemson the past 3 years, he'd be having a lot more hype. And, unfortunately for him, he's just going to have to be the second quarterback taken off the board, I think. I've seen mocks where it's different and he's not the second quarterback. But personally, for Dynasty football, this should be the QB2 off the board, and this should be your second pick.
Yeah, it would be interesting to see how it plays out with him and Zach Wilson.
Yeah, well, believe it or not, I'm pick 3, and I'm not picking Zach Wilson at pick 3. I'm picking Trey Lance. We said it before. We'll say it 1,000 times. We're a Trey Lance podcast. We've been believers in Trey Lance for a while. You really only have his sophomore season at North Dakota State to go off, but it's pretty electric from what you could see. I wouldn't be surprised if he gets drafted to a team like the Panthers or the Falcons, some team like that, which I think would be a great fit. But just the prospect himself, I just really like him. I know that people are going to say he's like a project quarterback and, they got to work on him. But I truly think he will be ready for the NFL. And I think if, he could even be a day one starter when we have the training camps and whatnot in place this year. So that's who I'm taking at 3.
Yeah,
So I guess obviously we are playing Superflex, so quarterbacks going 1, 2, and 3 here is not a surprise, especially when they're all as highly touted as these guys are. These guys are all expected to go in the first 10 picks of the NFL draft, along with Zach Wilson, who hasn't come off the board yet. But to the listeners out there who maybe not don't play Superflex or even a little new to it, I guess you guys want to go over like why a quarterback is so valuable here. Just because I think a lot of people are going to say quarterbacks coming off the board 1, 2, and 3 is just a cop-out move.
Yeah, so in Superflex League, there's only 32 starting quarterbacks. And I mean, I think we're going with the assumption, I feel like a standard league is 12 people. So you do 12 times 2 quarterbacks, each team, that's 24 quarterbacks already off the board. It's kind of like running backs right now in just a standard league. Already 24 running backs are taken off the board, which only leaves the bottom 8 quarterbacks left to just be dispersed around. So there's going to be 4 teams without a quarterback during bye weeks and whatnot, which is not ideal because you've seen like quarterbacks score the most amount of points. Last year, I think Jimmy Garoppolo was like the quarterback 20 or something like that, 22. I'm just throwing numbers out here, but Jimmy Garoppolo was like quarterback 22, which was the same as like an RB10 overall. So, quarterbacks are going to be the consistent point getters that you're going to want in that second spot, in your Superflex spot. And since they're such a tough commodity to come by, and, there's a lot of the lower quarterbacks, they're constantly revolving and, in and out, who you're never sure if he's going to be safe on your team. If you could find that solid start and forget about quarterback, it's so ideal in Superflex leagues because then you could just focus on the rest of your team to build around, and those pieces are kind of easier to buy. If this is your first year playing Superflex, you'll notice that it's going to get progressively harder to go out and trade for quarterbacks because people are going to realize how valuable they are to you. So, yeah, that basically sums up why I think quarterbacks are so valuable in Superflex. If you guys have anything to add.
Yeah, I thought JT summed it up well. If you're entering a Superflex league and you don't think quarterbacks are as important as we've been saying, you realize it a year later. Like, well, after the first season's done, most people realize how important and critical they are. And if you don't have 2 consistent starters, even just 2 people that you feel about good will be starters for like the next few years onward, it puts yourself in a really handicapped position because then you got to trade some of your other good skill players, good running backs, good receivers, draft picks to get that long-term quarterback. So if you can get one at the top of the draft, I think it's completely worth it.
And my rule of thumb for quarterbacks in Superflex leagues is in a rookie draft is I want anyone drafted in the first 15 picks should be a priority for you. Like if they're drafted within the first 15 picks in the first round of the actual NFL draft, you should go out and make those guys a priority for you to draft. Because we've seen what happened this year. Joe Burrow was at 1, Tua was, I forget what number Miami picked him, and Justin Herbert was
5.
6. And Justin Herbert was 6. And in a lot of leagues, I think people made the mistake of letting Justin Herbert fall to a later first-round pick, even a second-round pick. And now if we were to redraft the rookie draft, Justin Herbert would probably be, 1, 2, maybe 3. But definitely a top 3 pick. So it's kind of been proven, football's not an exact science, but if you're a quarterback and you're drafted in the first 15 picks, there's a much higher chance that you hit than any other position, really. So that's what you got to really focus on, first 15 picks. And that teams will give that quarterback a chance because they've invested so much into that quarterback. And the GM is basically banking his entire career on that quarterback. So that's my priority when I think about Superflex. And that's what I expect Trey Lance to be for pick number 3.
Well, I'm glad you guys just hyped up quarterbacks so much because at pick 4, I am passing on Zach Wilson for my clear RB1 right now in Javonte Williams. Javonte Williams, I believe, is the best running back in the class, barring a absolutely disastrous pro day because there's no combine anymore. Some quick metrics. I studied 4 games in depth of Javonte Williams, and according to my tracking, on 70 total touches, he had 41 forced missed tackles, or a rate of 0.58 forced missed tackles per touch. On runs, it's even higher at 0.625 forced missed tackles per touch, easily the highest in the class. To compare, Travis Etienne is at about 0.46 and Naji Harris under 0.3. When I look at running backs, I value guys that can break tackles, and that's exactly what Javonte Williams is. He is a tackle breaking machine. He's a prospect that doesn't really have a ton of glaring weaknesses, and if I was an NFL GM, I'd value him in the first round. So that's my pick 4. And a lot of people are saying Javonte Williams could be an RB1. They have him slotted behind an Etienne or a Naji Harris. Nope, he's my RB1 by a decent margin. And then at pick 5, now that you guys just told everyone how valuable quarterbacks were, I'll be picking Zach Wilson. Right now, I'm pretty sure he's probably my QB2, probably between him and Lance, I think, right now, just because if we're talking about ceiling, I don't know what that guy was saying on that mock draft about Justin Fields, because I do believe that if we're talking about ceiling, Trey Lance is the guy that you have to mention, because, you talk about arm talent. He can throw the ball really far and really hard. I wouldn't say instantly coming into the league he's got a top 5 arm, but he's close. Now, Zach Wilson, he's a guy that he just checks about every box. He's mobile, makes pretty good decisions, a little shoddy here and there. He's good at throwing off platform. There are a few concerns with Zach Wilson, but I mean, the guy threw like 73.5% completion percentage, which would have been 3rd or 2nd all time in the NFL for a single season. So Zach Wilson coming to me at 5, I'll take it. QB4 off the board.
So it's interesting that you say that Zach Wilson's your 2 and Trey Lance is your 3. That means Justin Fields must be your 4, who I took at 2. And why are you so low on Justin Fields, who the great majority of people do have him ranked as QB2 as I took him?
So I haven't really done a deep dive into the quarterbacks yet. So that's part of the issue. I think the one thing I don't really love about Justin Fields is that there are a couple things I don't like. I understand the whole progression issue that people have with Justin Fields. I think that is an issue that's a little bit overblown. I think one of the big problems is that I don't see him make a lot of these NFL level throws that I see from Trey Lance and that I see from Zach Wilson. Throws where you're throwing people open or throwing into a receiver where a defender has bad leverage, so that say you're throwing a tight end in the seam and you see he's kind of shaded to the inside, you throw it to that backside shoulder in a place where the defender can't catch the ball. That's something I see a lot out of a guy like Zach Wilson that I don't really see a ton out of from Justin Fields. I'm not saying that Justin Fields is a bad prospect. This is a pretty loaded quarterback class at the top end of the draft. It's just, as of right now, Trey Lance is more of a project, but all these guys are projects. So I'd rather have the guy with a better arm and who's more mobile that I think I can still fix. In terms of Zach Wilson, I think he's more ready to play now than Justin Fields would be. So Justin Fields, it's not that he's bad. He's almost just kind of getting the short end of the stick for me.
Enough. Ready to move on?
Yeah, just before we move on real quick, Frank, where would you pick Justin Fields overall? Like say the other quarterbacks were drafted ahead, anyone that you like, Javonte Williams, like where are you taking Justin Fields in a Superflex league?
So I would probably place Justin Fields where I have Naji Harris ranked, and that would be picks 106 to 108. I think the question mark is I as of right now, granted, this could easily change depending on what happens in landing spots and all that jazz. But right now, I would clearly have Trevor Lawrence above him. I would clearly have Javonte Williams above him. I think I have a slight gap of Wilson and Fields above Justin Fields, very slight. It could easily change. And I think I would rather have Jamar Chase and Devontae Smith. So like when I'm looking at it, because I'd rather have those guys, the question becomes, okay, it's Justin Fields versus the other two quarterbacks and Naji Harris, which in that order, I have those two receivers, Trevor Lawrence, Javonte Williams, they're going to be 105 to 108, 109. So I think earliest 105 right now.
All right, fair enough. I am obviously much higher on Justin Fields, so we'll just have to wait and see what he ends up doing. But to keep it interesting and keep us moving on, someone that you just mentioned is someone who I'm picking here at pick number 6. He'll be wide receiver 1 off the board, and that's Jamar Chase. He took a year off. So far in my back-to-back picks, I'm taking people that took a year off in Trey Lynch and Jamar Chase. And what I like about Jamar Chase at pick number 6 is he is a great elite wide receiver prospect. You're going to hear this a lot. These terms are going to get thrown around. They're going to throw comps around. They're going to comp different players to Hall of Famers. Like you're going to see a lot of Devontae Smith, Marvin Harrison kind of comps and whatnot. But I think a very realistic comp that I have for Jamar Chase is DJ Moore. They're both about 6 feet, 210 pounds roughly. And what's very interesting and something that you can actually like kind of see and visualize is Jamar Chase was at LSU when Joe Brady was the offensive coordinator for LSU. And now Joe Brady is working at the Carolina Panthers. I envision them both taking that same role where they're kind of like the, opposite of Robbie Anderson. That's kind of what Jamar Chase was doing with Justin Jefferson. And that's what's important. Jamar Chase was on the same team as Justin Jefferson, the rookie breakout, historic rookie year. And Jamar Chase forced Justin Jefferson into the wide receiver 2 on LSU. So that's, obviously not everything is going to pan out. Like there's a definite chance that Jamar Chase isn't going to be the successful thing. Like we've seen the first wide receiver that's typically taken in NFL drafts hasn't been the best wide receiver fantasy wise, but Jamar Chase is someone that I'm just going to bet on here. I like his, height and weight a lot better than Devontae Smith. I think, he's more durable, physical player. His really only knocks against him are he struggles to get separation at times. People kind of criticize his speed, and he's taken a year off. And to me, I just don't think that's enough for me to knock him down from wide receiver 1 or pick 6. To be fair, I just think he's someone that has incredible talent and someone that is, could potentially be wide receiver 1 for years to come. So that's who I'm taking at 6.
Yeah, and with the point you made about like sometimes the top receiver doesn't do as well, I think Jamar Chase is better than the last couple number 1 receiver drafted that we've seen over the last few years. So I think he's just in his own different tier. He's crazy. So I agree with your pick. Who's up next?
At 7 here, I'm up. And this pick was very difficult for me. There was a lot of guys that I was considering. I was considering, obviously, Devontae Smith, the Heisman Trophy winner. I was considering his teammate, Jalen Waddle, and I was considering Naji Harris. Those guys are the next 3 on the board for me. But instead, as this is a tight end premium, I took the guy that I think could be the next, elite tight end in the NFL, and that's Kyle Pitts out of Florida. To put into perspective how important or how impressive tight ends can be in a tight end premium league, Travis Kelce, who was tight end 1 this year, would have been receiver 1 this year. And Darren Waller, who was tight end 2, would have been receiver 3, only with Devontae Adams ahead of him. So these tight ends, it's a very shallow position. When we did our rankings on our spreadsheet, Frank had ranked about 5 tight ends and then just put a picture of a desert and is like the barren wasteland that is the tight end position. And he's right, just because there's not many guys that are consistently productive at the position. Outside of the Kelseys, the Andrews, the Wallers, the Hawkinsons of the world, the Kittles of the world. So outside of those five guys, the tight end position is really just a toss up. And if you can get one as good and as talented as Kyle Pitts, it just makes your team so much better. You get to start a guy in the tight end position that is good enough to play wide receiver. And it's just such an advantage. And the tight end premium just adds even more to that. So at 7 here, I'm going with Kyle Pitts from Florida.
Yeah, believe it or not, I'm actually a big fan of this pick. Jake just mentioned a lot of really good reasons, and with wide receivers and running backs, like when you draft them, you kind of expect them to take some time, and they're not going to exactly be considered running back one territory, running back two, wide receiver one, wide receiver two. When Kyle Pitts is drafted, I'm going to consider him straight away, regardless of what team he goes to or what's going on. I'm considering him TE6 overall, like right behind Hawkinson and Waller and everything. He's already right in that tight end one category and someone that I would love to have just to shore up the position. So I love this pick at 7.
Real quick question, actually. Who would you value higher currently? Kyle Pitts, never played a snap, or Mark Andrews?
Kyle Pitts.
Kyle Pitts.
I mean,
I like Mark Andrews.
Obviously, if you're listeners of our podcast on a regular basis, you know how I feel about the Ravens offense. You know that I think it's not an offense to own. So obviously I'm going to say it's Kyle Pitts, but I don't believe in I don't believe in the Ravens. And although Mark Andrews did have a solid year, he finished in the top 10 of tight ends again. It's just not that difficult to do. Just because if you get 5 or 6 touchdowns, you're going to finish in the top 10 of tight ends. It's a very weird position. It's a very top-heavy position. And I think Kyle Pitts has that opportunity as a rookie to get, 6 or 7 touchdowns and 700 yards. I think that's a very, not even high-end projection for him. And that will put him immediately in that, top 5 tight end discussion.
Yeah, I'm not fully I know Jake's made that point. I'm not fully like that's not the reason necessarily I'm picking Pitts over Andrews with just being complete styles of the Ravens offense. I think they'll improve. It's more of I still like Andrews a lot. I consider him just still in like kind of like that top half, the top half of the tight end ones tier. But man, it's just because Pitts is insanely like I don't remember the last time I saw a tight end prospect that looked this good coming out. I don't remember. Like he's better than Hawkinson was coming out, better than Fant, better than Ebron years back. I don't even remember who would be the last person who I'd say was better than Pitts coming out. He's just insane. You can make an argument he's the second most talented pass catcher in this draft if you just group the tight ends and receivers together. So, and especially in tight end premium, I was hoping that Jake wouldn't pick him so that I could take him with the next pick. That's what I'm saying. And speaking of that, transitioning to my next pick. Jake mentioned the other guys he was considering, and those are the 3 next guys who went off the board. My first one at 108, I'm taking Naji Harris. With him, he's a lot of people's RB1s. I know Frank made the very good case for Javonte Williams being RB1, which I understand because Javonte Williams did have a better break and tackle rate, and there's concerns that how much of a product is Naji Harris from the Alabama offensive line. But I still do believe in this talent and think he's going to be really good on the next level. Like anytime they got him the ball in his hands, he would just destroy every single SEC defense. Going all the way to the championship, even against Ohio State, good game. He killed. I remember when they played Florida in the SEC championship, he just annihilated them. Against Notre Dame, he had a great game. He's someone who I think can be an every down back on the next level. I think his receiving game is good enough to be able to be used on passing downs also. And at 108, I think he's really good value there. Even though
my question to you about Naji Harris, and the one concern I had, and Frank kind of brought it up earlier, is that he didn't break a lot of tackles. Obviously, we've seen the athleticism, we've seen him hurdle defenders, we've seen him run over some defenders at times, but overall, he did not break a lot of tackles, and he was running behind arguably one of the best offensive lines, if not the best offensive line in all of
The
college
best.
football at Alabama.
It's not
Yeah.
arguable. It is the best run blocking offensive line in college football, and I'm not sure it's close.
Exactly. And my point is, if he's drafted as one of these top end running backs in the draft, there's a good chance that he might not be running behind one of these great offensive lines of the league. Do you have any concerns about him, transitioning and trying to find the holes that aren't as large as they were when he was running at Alabama behind this crazy offensive line?
No, all of those are very valid concerns. And Javonte Williams did break tackles at a higher rate. And as important as that is, I'm not going to put everything into it. Like, it's a big consideration and factor for me with evaluating running backs, but I'm not going to make it everything. Like, I don't know if you remember a couple years ago, Montgomery broke tackles at a higher rate than Miles Sanders or Josh Jacobs coming out of college. I'm pretty sure that was the case. I'm pretty confident in that. And he's turned out to be a good NFL back. He was phenomenal this season. But Miles and Jacobs are still also very good. So while that is a huge factor for me, I'm looking at different things. Like, I'm a fan of his vision. Every time he gets the ball in his hands, he just makes plays. He's a bigger back, and he's out here like hurdling people and using his speed to turn the corner on guys on the next level. I'm a big believer in this pick, and especially at 108, I'm easily take the chance on him there. I think it's good value.
Yeah, I just want to say really quickly a couple things. First off, I'm not saying don't draft Naji Harris. I still like Naji Harris. 108 is great value for him. I have him, like I said before, with that Justin Fields thing. I have him in that 106 to 108 range. It really just depends on what you think of the quarterback prospects and someone like Kyle Pitts. If you're sitting there 107 like Jake was, you just have to kind of value in, what does my team need versus how good is this prospect if you're going best player available. My whole problem is, Lounis, answer me this question real quick. Who is your pro
Yes.
comp for Najee Harris?
That's tough.
And is it
Because I know
Derrick Henry?
people want him. I know. That's what I was gonna say. I know people want him to be Derrick Henry, but he's not. He's not Derrick Henry.
So, but would you
Um,
say that the consensus pro comp for him is Derrick Henry right now?
People have been using that. Yeah, I don't think he can be Derrick Henry, so I'm not gonna say that. But that's been the popular one that people
So
have
the
been using.
problem, let's just assume you said Derrick Henry real quick. I wanted you to say
Yeah.
Derrick Henry.
Because no, that is the public pro comp. Like, that's
So
kind of
yeah,
like the
let's
most
just take the
popular one.
public one then. So since 2017, this is before the 2,000-yard season that Derrick Henry just had. Since 2017, Derrick Henry had led the NFL in broken tackles. I'm not sure that Najee Harris, if you were expecting him to be the next Derrick Henry and to go into an offense where they're just going to line up, 21 personnel, sometimes 31 personnel even, and just slam him the ball 25 times, and you're expecting him to be Derrick Henry, that's where I have the problem. I have my pro comp for him as Le'Veon Bell, and I would be much more excited if he went to an offense where he's being used because he's a great receiver and being used in a myriad of different ways depending on the matchup that they're up against, instead of just saying, hey, this guy's going to be a workhorse, 25 carry, running outside zone every play. I don't like that outlook if that's the outlook for Najee Harris over some of the other backs right now.
That's completely fair, and I think that's a good argument in case where I don't know if I would take him in a Superflex tight end premium draft in that top 5 like some people are. But for a lot of the reasons you mentioned. Um, but I think like you said, in that like 107 range, I think then is where you're getting him at good value. I don't know if I can go top 5 with him yet, considering the quarterbacks that are there. Jamar Chase, Pitts, Javonte Williams. I don't know if I can go that high, but I think this area is where if you pick him around here, like 106, 107, 108, especially 109, that's where you can get him at a good value and price. And now going back to back, I also, turning the corner, have pick 109. With pick 109, this is again still my hot take.
Frank, you have it ready? Frank, you have it ready yet?
I'm sorry, Lounis. I'm not going to give you too much crap for this because, PFF I know has Jalen Waddle over Devontae Smith. I I can't do it. I can't
Yeah,
sit
they do.
idly by and have people. I just don't understand. Like, aside from the fact that Jalen Waddle is so much faster than everyone else on the field, why does
It is.
everyone like him over Devontae Smith? What else does Devontae Smith have to do? How many more plays does he have to make before he's above Jalen Waddle in your eyes?
Now, I think Devontae Smith is going to be a stud too. I think he's worthy of, in real life, being a first-round pick. I think he'll be really good in the NFL. I just think Jalen Waddle will be a little bit better. I think his athleticism. If you remember coming into the season, there wasn't a big difference between the two coming in. Some people, I know, including you, Frank, like Devontae Smith more. We're talking about public perception. They're viewed as kind of a 1A, 1B in that receiving core. And Waddle, every time he gets the ball in his hands, makes an insane play. And Devontae Smith's numbers did start to go off once Waddle got hurt, and he could just stack up all these targets. But I still believe in Jalen Waddle. He's insane, insanely fast, insanely quick. Just get him in open space, and he can literally do anything. He's good at route running, good hands. And this is something I'm going to stick by. I'm going to live or die based off of my Jalen Waddle over Devontae Smith take, because I'm taking that to the grave with me. And I'll either look like a genius this time next year, or I'm going to look like an idiot. And I'm willing to take the chance.
I'm going to come here to actually defend Lounis, believe it or not.
Yeah, I know you're going to defend Lounis.
I'm going to come to bat for Lounis. And so there's a couple things I think that everyone watching this needs to keep in mind, right? I think a lot of people, first off, are going to see Alabama, and they're going to see the past 2 years with 4 wide receivers potentially drafted in the first round, and think Alabama's like wide receiver U. When I'm here to say I think that's LSU with Justin Jefferson, Jermar Chase, and Terrence Marshall, who we'll talk about later. I like those 3 guys way better than I like the 4 from Alabama. And now the thing is, with the discussion of Waddle to Devontae Smith, Waddle outproduced and outperformed Smith as a true freshman. I get that they're actually not that different in age because Waddle's kind of older for a junior, but Waddle outplayed Smith and Henry Ruggs as a true freshman. Then, this year prior to Waddle getting hurt, Waddle was outproducing and outperforming Devontae Smith again. And, that compounded with Waddle is a bigger receiver. I get that he broke his ankle, but I think he is more durable and more NFL ready, NFL comp wise. I just think he's more likely to succeed than Devontae Smith. And that's what I got to go with.
I've been waiting to pull this out.
Love it, JT.
All right. So real quick. I don't want to take too much time on this, but I have to. First off,
Going down with
yes, Waddle came in and outperformed Devontae Smith as a true freshman. Did you see what Devontae Smith looked like as a true freshman? If you thought he was lanky now, the dude was a Lankster McGee back when he was a true freshman. But I want to point to last year, because Devontae Smith clearly outperformed Jalen Waddle last year on a receiving core with Jerry Jeudy and Henry Ruggs and Waddle and them. Devontae Smith, you could argue, was the best receiver on that team last year. And he outproduced him this year. So the other thing too, is everyone keeps saying, I keep hearing this, oh, Devontae Smith's frame, he's going to get hurt, this, that. Well, what about the guy who's actually been hurt? Like Jalen Waddle. Devontae Smith has not missed a game in the past 2 years. Where is this coming from?
I'm not saying he's gonna get hurt. I mean, we had this discussion on a previous episode that we might have lost. Rest in peace episode. But my whole thing is first off, Jalen Waddle is a junior against a senior, right? And there's just so much, if we go into analytics of what it means to be a junior coming out versus senior coming out, what it means to have a certain BMI, over 24 versus under 24 coming out. And it's just, the analytics are just not in favor of Devontae Smith. I just like the idea of Jalen Waddle outproducing Devontae Smith, as far as the odds are so much more in Jalen Waddle's favor. You have to be a significant outlier for Devontae Smith to succeed.
You want to know why you guys hate Devontae Smith?
Sure.
It's because of this. You're saying that to ride the ride, you got to be this tall. And
No, but it's
Devontae
not. You have to
Smith
be that
is only
tall.
this tall, and he
No, but-
only weighs this much.
Yeah,
You know
yeah,
what,
because of his
Devontae
weight.
Smith? I can't wait for him to prove everyone wrong for the third season in a row.
No, I'm telling you, me and JT about
He's
to look like genius.
175 pounds. Like, and that's after putting on weight. Like, he's not going to put on much more weight on that frame and still be able to keep that speed. It's just you can't do it. And so, like, I think my comp to him would probably be someone of like Marquise Brown. Like you gotta get the ball in his hands and like hopefully he's able to do stuff that way. But like, it's just Devontae Smith. You saw in the championship game against Ohio State, right? Devontae Smith was predominantly just getting the ball on screens and then just running around and doing stuff that way, right? If I'm going out and I'm drafting a wide receiver, I want the wide receiver to go out and run and make routes and catch passes that way and go against top corners. Devontae Smith wasn't really doing that for most of that season. I know he had a couple good, contested catches against, I think LSU comes to mind, but I just think Jalen Waddle is the better player when I think of those kind of guys. And that's why Jalen Waddle, I agree that Lounis's pick isn't crazy. I'm okay picking either one at the spot. I think either one at the spot would be great, but Jalen Waddle is who I would feel safer betting on at this point.
And I want to back up the point. I do think Devontae Smith is going to be a stud.
Yeah.
He's an insanely good receiver. This is just liking a guy a little bit more.
Listen, I haven't finished the receivers, so I mean, maybe you guys have just watched more of it than I have. It's just watching Alabama last year. I had Devontae Smith, like Lounis has been saying. I had him as a first-round graded receiver last year.
Yeah.
He did nothing but increase that this year. Like I see nothing wrong with him. I don't know.
It makes
I'm
you
sticking
wonder.
with it. I'm sticking with it. I got called wrong for having CeeDee Lamb over Jerry Jeudy last draft season.
It makes you wonder why Devontae
What do you
Smith
mean?
didn't come out last
CeeDee
year.
Lamb's ADP was higher than Jerry Jeudy
Yeah.
last year.
Yeah, I don't think that's absurd.
No, people had Jeudy as their wide receiver one before the
Yeah,
draft.
some
Jake
people
probably
did.
And so did
Some,
people.
I did have them, but they were neck and neck going into rookie drafts, and no one said either
Jake,
way which one was better.
Jake,
Get outta here.
heading
All
into the
right.
draft, who'd you have as your one?
All right, Judy ahead. Yes, but that's not
All right,
saying
let's go into the mock. Let's go. Jake, you were at pick 10. You made a smart decision. Tell us about it.
Yeah. At pick 10, I just took the guy Lounis should have fucking took. I took Devontae Smith.
He's again
Obviously-
testy.
Dude, I mean, like, listen, the guy won the Heisman Trophy. He's a uber talented wide receiver. A receiver hasn't won the Heisman since 1991. Is that the last time? I think it was Desmond Howard, wasn't it?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Wow.
So obviously this guy's super talented. Yes, there are concerns about his size, but like Frank said, he actually did well getting off the line versus press coverage. He got open, and he in the national championship game against one of the best defenses in all of college football in Ohio State. He murked them for 215 yards and 3 touchdowns in one half.
All right, but
The guy is just unbelievable. There's no way he makes it outside the top 10 in the actual NFL draft. The fact that I can get him at 10 in a fantasy draft is a joke.
one, I think it's almost probable that he doesn't get picked in the top 10 in the NFL draft. I just think there are so many good prospects above him, likely. But 2, it's just he's a senior playing against younger people. Like, he should have been playing in the NFL. I don't get why he didn't come. Well, I guess because Henry Ruggs and Jerry Jeudy were already coming out from the team is why he didn't come out. I mean, we could just keep going in circles about this argument, but it's just
He
when
didn't win
players.
the draft stock by staying.
Yeah, he did, but I mean, when players decide not to go to the NFL and stay back, that always makes me wary. And I'll talk about that with my next pick if we're ready to move on. Because at 11 is someone who did decide to stay back, Travis Etienne. And I kind of had the same issue with him too, and that's why he's getting picked at 11, I believe. Like Travis Etienne likely, listen, all of the college athletes who are about to declare, they get a review from, these experts and analysts telling him like, oh, we believe you're a mid-first draft grade or whatnot, right? And so Etienne likely heard that he wasn't going to be able to compete with the Jonathan Taylors and DeAndre Swifts of the world, and that he should probably stay back a year, which automatically has me lower on Etienne. It's what's going to hurt Chris Olave for me this year too, because he decided to stay back. Now, with that said, I think at 11, getting the third running back off the board is just, something that you probably should do. It's likely he's going to end up in a good fit. Fits will change running backs probably more than they will change anyone else. But Frank said earlier he was second in the forced mixed tackles to Javonte Williams. Personally, I think I have him as RB2 above Naji Harris. I just like him more. I think I'm almost ready to put Javonte Williams as my running back 1-2, just because, like I mentioned before, like if you're willing to come out as a underclass or a junior, rather than a senior, I just value you more because I think that you're ready to go and you're ready to be an NFL player. You're ready to compete and learn at the higher level rather than stunting your growth, going back to college for another year and competing against lesser talent. So that's just what I think. What's your issue? You're stunting your growth if you stay in college. You're stunting your growth.
I disagree.
You're stunting your growth if you stay in college.
I will say one thing really quickly, Jake, before you go, and that I think that JT is overblowing it a tad, but I know for a fact that the Steelers value if you are a junior or a senior. Obviously, it depends. Like if you're a Brandon Whedon and you're a junior, that's a different story. But let's just go from the fact that a junior and a senior are 1 age year difference apart, that the Steelers do take that into account in their draft grades. And last time I checked, the Steelers are pretty freaking good at drafting.
They're very good at drafting.
And they do that for their first round picks. They don't do that for many of their other picks, but for 100% for their first round picks, they usually draft young.
Because it's just a fact of like what Devontae Smith, Najee Harris, and Travis Etienne are doing. They're doing against lesser talent. They should be doing what Jonathan Taylor, DeAndre Swift, Justin Jefferson, and CeeDee Lamb are doing. Like they should be in the NFL already playing, already producing. And they probably aren't going to be at that level, but at least they're in the NFL, already learning NFL playbooks, NFL styles, building rapport with NFL quarterbacks. It's something I value too. I'm not afraid of taking a senior wide receiver in the second round. I just think at the first round, you're much more likely to hit if you're an early declare than a senior declare.
Listen, I understand the fact that if you come out as a junior, you get that extra year of being with an NFL coaching staff, learning the playbooks for an extra year, being with a strength and conditioning coach for an extra year per se. But at the same time, listen, being in the NFL and not playing and not getting as many game reps as being a star in college and getting 25 touches a game, to me, yes, I understand your argument, but I don't think it's stunting their growth per se. I just think they're getting different experience.
We're just gonna go in a circle about this, but like someone like Cam Akers who had to sit and learn for about half the year, a little over half the year. I prefer that he came out over like staying at Florida State. It's a preference kind of thing, I think. But now Cam Akers is an RB1, and I don't know. I don't think that's going to happen with Travis Etienne and Najee Harris. I think they'll be solid RB2s, but I don't think they're going to be up in the cream of the crop kind of value for running backs.
All right, I'm gonna pick now.
Okay.
I am now picking at pick 12 and 13, and I'm gonna go with my wide receiver 3 on my board personally, and that is Rondale Moore. Rondale Moore is a guy that I have absolutely loved ever since I first laid eyes on him. This guy is electric. He's basically like a wide receiver that's a running back with the football in his hands. I comp him to almost like the wide receiver form of Reggie Bush. Like this guy is insanely talented. I have rarely seen players get triple teamed and quadruple teamed on short passes, and that is what has happened with Rondale Moore on multiple occasions that I've watched him on film. They will line up a screen to Rondale Moore, and literally I've seen 6, 7 players fall for the screen. It is absurd. Defense's number one game plans against Rondale Moore are we stop Rondale Moore before we stop the offense. Like it is absurd. This guy, I think, is a stud. He's going to test really well. I would be shocked if he's not a first-round pick in the NFL draft, and he is someone that I am targeting in every single one of my leagues. Any rebuttals? Any Frank or
No,
clowns?
I
I'm with
watched
you. I would have taken him there. I've said before, I'm a huge Rondale Moore fan. I know you are too. I believe Jake is too.
I watched a lot
I
of
think
Big Ten football. He just tore up a lot of good defenses that all play in the Big Ten. The Penn States of the world, the Ohio States of the world. He's had good games against all of them, and that's playing at Purdue, where it's not known to be a football school. So I think he's a very talented wide receiver, and people are going to be, I guess, surprised just because it's not a school where you usually get these star wide receivers coming from.
Yeah, and the one thing I'll add is if you're looking at these mock drafts and you have issues at wide receiver depth and you're looking for wide receivers, I think trading for some early second round picks sooner rather than later is probably the ideal move, because I think there are going to be a handful, like a solid 4 or 5 wide receivers that could be very good depth plays for you, wide receiver 2s, 3s kind of categories that you could get in this zone right here, the early second, late first, early second. I think that's where a lot of the good wide receivers they're going to be taken. And that's something that you really have to focus on. And it could really change your team around if you're able to draft well and scout the guys and know who you want to take and just take your guys at these positions.
All right. And since we're snaking, I get another pick. Let's ride.
Yep.
With my second pick, I'm going to be taking Terrence Marshall Jr. Terrace Marshall Jr.
Yep.
So real quick before I get into the analysis behind him, there's a funny story because when I was looking him up as a prospect, so his uncle, who is related to him, he played in the NFL in 19 something or another, 1970s, I think, early 1980s, and he died drowning in a pond, saving 3 kids from drowning, something along the lines of that, which is absolutely absurd. I feel sorry for him, but absolutely ridiculous. But going to why I think he's good. This is a guy, he's 6'3", 205 pounds. He's got that number one type of build. I watched him and LSU absolutely destroy my team, South Carolina, this year. And for those who don't know, South Carolina has 2 legit cornerbacks, J.C. Horn and Israel Mukwamu, and they really didn't have a good answer for Terrence Marshall. He had 2 touchdowns in that game, 70 or 80 something yards and a handful of catches. This is a guy that, like JT said, you get him in the early portion of a second round. I think that he's the kind of guy that would have first round talent in let's just say, for example, a 2019 class, when you're comparing him to guys like Deebo Samuel and Marquise Hollywood Brown and whatnot. I think that you could make a clear argument that Terrace Marshall is just as good of a prospect, if not better, than those guys were coming out. So I will gladly take him at 13 and run.
Yeah, I'm kind of actually upset that you took him at this pick because I was hoping he'd fall to 14 and I could take him with this pick. But yeah, Jamar Chase was out this year and Terrace Marshall just showed off what he could do. LSU wasn't a great team this year. We saw that. It's tough when you lose so many players to the NFL and so much talent goes to the NFL for you to then go and repeat that success. But Terrace Marshall was one of the few bright spots of LSU this year. He's someone I am zoning in on targeting in dynasty drafts because I think he could be, like Frank said, he's got the kind of wide receiver 1 build. And someone else that could potentially do that as well is who I'm going to now take instead of Terrace Marshall because he's off the board, and that's Rashad Bateman. He'll be the wide receiver 6 off the board. He played for Minnesota. It was very interesting to see his sophomore year is basically what we're going off of. This year was kind of like a throwaway. He said he wasn't going to play. Then all of a sudden he played. Then he stopped playing. Just a weird kind of throwaway year. But his sophomore year was something that like we're going off Rondale Moore with his freshman year. Rashad Bateman sophomore year was 60 yards for 1,200 yards, 60 receptions for 1,200 yards and 11 touchdowns. And he kind of demoted Tyler Johnson, who was considered like a pretty stud wide receiver on Minnesota. He put them as a wide receiver too. He's 6'2", about 210. It's a very solid build. It's someone he goes up and he gets those contested catches. I think his main concern or people's main concern about him is speed and his ability to separate. I'm in the camp that I think it's more overrated. Like if you could catch the ball, you could catch the ball. You kind of just need a quarterback with confidence to throw to you. So, situation will be important. But yeah, at 14, I'm going to take Rashad Bateman.
The only knock I have on Rashad Bateman, because like I said, I watched a lot of Big Ten football, beating up on my Maryland Terrapins, but he got such a large target share in this Minnesota offense that I just don't know if his numbers are repeatable when he's not going to get, nearly 50% target share, which is an absurd number for a wide receiver here.
Yeah, but on the flip side, I like I don't know if you look into the analytics a whole lot with like breakout age and dominator rating and whatnot, but I like when someone's able to just command such a huge target share because if they're commanding that big of a target share, like defenses are gonna have to key on them. Like like 50% of the passing plays are going to him. Like it's important for defenses to game plan around him, and he was still able to produce. So that's something I do like.
No, like I said, I like Bateman a lot. I think he's a very physical, very like you said, great hands, can really go up and get a ball. But that's the one knock I have is if he doesn't get that large of a target share, can he still produce as much in the NFL?
I guess I should also, while we're discussing this, like if you're listening to this mock draft and you haven't heard of this, might be like a high school presentation for like 1 minute, but like if you're scouting wide receivers and you want wide receivers, analytics are something I like to go off of. Like, it's not guaranteed to work. Sometimes it's just feels for the guys. But places that you want to start to really get a base understanding is BMI, breakout age, dominator rating. And so BMI, obvious, kind of everyone knows what BMI is. Breakout age and dominator rating kind of go hand in hand. And it's essentially when you get people judge it differently, but 20% to 30% of the team's yards and touchdowns is considered like a dominator rating, like that's you're above that percentage. And the age of the season in which you do it is your breakout age. Like you break out if you're able to do that. And typically if you're able to break out younger and have a higher dominator rating, it kind of leads towards more NFL success. It's not perfect science, but it's probably the best at what we have right now. And so that's why I like to, not rely on, but something that I definitely use to help me gauge what receivers I like more or less. Obviously, you still got to look at the tape. I like to go out and listen to other people's opinions on all the players too, just to make sure like I see what they can see kind of thing. But it's very important to go out and do your own research. And, listening to mock drafts like this is probably another good way too. So, yeah.
Yeah, and to your point with the analytics, that's also part of the reason I love to an earlier pick, Rondale Moore. Rondale Moore's his would go off like crazy, especially his breakout age and dominator rating. Who's up with the next pick? Is it Jake now? With pick
I'm back.
15, 203 of the second round.
Yep, and with this pick, I'm going with another wide receiver. Like we said, if you need a wide receiver, trade for some second-round picks. These early second-round picks and even later second-round picks in this year's draft are loaded with wide receivers that we all believe are very talented and will help your team moving forward. So with this pick, I took a guy. His older brother plays in the Packers. It's Amon-Ra St. Brown, the younger brother of Equinemius St. Brown. He played at USC and he was the best receiver on that team by far. His sophomore year, he had 77 receptions for roughly 1,050 yards, 6 touchdowns. And this year he added another 500 yards and 7 touchdowns in only 6 games. He's just a very talented receiver. He really gets off the line well. He runs a great route tree and his hands are just fantastic. Moving wherever he lands, he's gonna maybe not be that number 1 wide receiver on a team, but he will be for sure wide receiver 2 on a team and put up some very good fantasy numbers for you.
Yeah, I like that pick. I'm going with another receiver who I personally have a little bit ranked higher, but I like Amon-Ra a ton too. Going with my guy. These next two picks are Florida bias, but I legitimately think these are the next two best prospects. With this pick, I'm going Kadarius Toney, wide receiver from Florida. What pick is this exactly? This is pick 16. So for me, I have him in my top 6 receivers in this draft in general, possibly top 5. I still want to watch more Bateman. But I think he's just someone where if you just get the ball in his hands, he's such a good playmaker. He's so elusive. We saw what, and it wasn't just he's not one of these guys that's in like the Pac-12 and like just looks like they're making a bunch of plays against like
Amon-Ra's the Pac-12.
Amon-Ra's different. No, Amon-Ra's different. Amon-Ra's different. Amon-Ra's different. I just realized I didn't mean that against him. I just meant like some of those guys like a DeAnthony Thomas years ago, where it's like a small guy just kind of making plays there against bad defenses. This is a guy, if you look at his Toney, the last 3 games of his season, at Tennessee, which Tennessee was nothing crazy this year, but 8 for 108 in the touchdown. Against LSU, 9 for 182 in a touchdown. And then in the SEC championship against Bama, 8 for 153 in a touchdown. There's not like a whole ton of receivers that are putting up those kind of numbers against Alabama and LSU. What is it? Will Kyle Trask also playing with him? But he's just someone who I think he's going to be really good on the next level. I don't know if he's going to be, like Jake said with Amon-Ra, like a pure, like number 1 dominating receiver, but I could see him being a very good number 2 receiver on the next level who can be a deep threat and just someone where if you get the ball in his hands, he can make plays. And then going back to back, I'm sticking with another Florida guy. This isn't so much about that. It's more just, again, Superflex, as we mentioned earlier, quarterbacks always are going to be important to all of us. And sometimes like I don't think he's supposed to be a first-round pick in the NFL draft. Maybe I don't think he's expected to, him or Mac Jones. But I'm going Kyle Trask here. Kyle Trask still impressed me last year. I know he had a really bad last game of the season, but he was missing a bunch of guys on offense, including O-linemen, including Kyle Pitts. But what he did against Alabama impressed me. What he did throughout the entire season impressed me. He was in the Heisman race. And he's just someone, if you really like Mac Jones more, I wouldn't blame someone for going Mac Jones in the mid-second. But I think both those quarterbacks should be second-round picks, especially when there's a chance that they do start at the next level. Getting a starting young quarterback for like a mid-late second-rounder is really good value. So I'm taking the chance on Kyle Trask here.
This is an interesting pick for me. I guess I'm not as high on Kyle Trask as other people are, but in a Superflex league in a mid to early second, I guess I don't hate the pick.
I'll take the chance on him mid-second in a Superflex league.
Yeah, I don't hate the pick, I guess. We did a previous mock draft where Lounis took him actually at 12 overall.
Yeah, because he went to the Bears. That he would bump up my board if he gets drafted by the Bears.
I think that's the first time it's ever been said.
Yeah, going to the Bears in that offense isn't helping anybody.
Yeah,
I know. I'm just saying that because I think he can start way faster. I think he's better than Trubisky.
Don't you talk bad about my Maserati, Mitch. Don't you do
it. But Trubisky's his competition. I like his chances.
Kyle Trask, he's an interesting prospect because I think in terms of making difficult throws, he's right up there with any of the other prospects, right? Like that was my big knock against Justin Fields is like, what have I seen where he's really fitting a ball into a tight window or making a throw really in between defenders, those NFL level throws. And I will give Kyle Trask credit. He does make a ton of those throws. It's just with Kyle Trask, you get some wild decision making a lot of the time, and you get a below average NFL arm, which is, I think, a big turnoff and why I don't believe that Kyle Trask will be a first-round pick in the NFL draft. I think that he would be lucky to be in the early portion of the second even. I could see a team somewhere around where Jalen Hurts got picked, in that 44, 45 beyond range. I think that that's when NFL teams would start looking at him. But it's just, Kyle Trask, you got to be a clownist to really believe in this guy, or he's got to go to a great system because I feel like with Kyle Trask, you're almost hoping that he develops into a Drew Brees or a Tom Brady, and it's just how many times are we realistically going to expect that to happen? Not saying that I'm going to avoid Kyle Trask like the plague or anything. It's just I think for me, the earliest I'm taking him is late portion to the second round, and that's if I really need a quarterback.
In this Dynasty Superflex draft or real life draft?
In a Dynasty Superflex draft. In a real life draft, I mean, quarterback is just like too wacky, right? Like, if you desperately need a quarterback, you got to pay for him. So that's I think right now I'd have Kyle Trask like in that late second range as well in the NFL draft. But I need to finish my analysis on him.
Okay, that's fair. Who's Jake's picks up next.
Yeah, and just for a heads up to all the listeners out there, we keep saying that like we haven't done all our research yet. I mean, we've watched pretty much all of the guys that we're talking about. I mean, we're not uninformed here. Just letting people know that this is early in the off season. We're going to do a lot more scouting, a lot more, film watching, and we'll continue to release mock drafts as the off season progresses, as free agency in the NFL, clears up some things, and then following the draft as well. So just keep watching, and we'll keep giving you the information as we get more of it for you. So with this next pick, at pick 18 overall, 106, I believe that is, and I went with a guy that a lot of people thought was the best running back in college football in 2019. He ended up going back to school, and this year he really hurt his own value. It's Chuba Hubbard from Oklahoma State, but I really like the player. I think he has way too much potential to be lasting this late into a draft. As a sophomore at Oklahoma State, he had 330 carries for over 2,000 yards and 21 touchdowns, and added another 24 receptions and 200 yards in the air. He's an all-around prospect. I think he could be a true three-down back in the league. The one knock on him is that, obviously this year as a junior, he had a really, really down year. Only 133 carries, 625 yards. Yards per carry down from 6.5 to 4.5. But I just think it was a weird COVID year. Don't read too much into it. Obviously, the thing about Chuba Hubbard is he's a very patient runner, and he really understands blocking schemes. And I think it's going to really affect his draft stock, where he lands when he gets drafted. If he goes to a team that understands and is a good run blocking team, he will be fantastic, and he was going to skyrocket up board. So here at 206, it's well worth it for me.
Yeah, and I'm kind of happy you took him here because you said don't overlook it, overlook into his senior year. I'm looking into it pretty hard. And
first off, it's only his junior. It was only his junior.
Can I interject real quick?
Yeah.
So with Chuba Hubbard, according to my tracking, which is not perfect, he has a higher broken tackle rate than Naji Harris right now. The other thing that I will add is that I watched a couple of the Oklahoma State games. They had some major offensive line issues this year compared to previous years. A lot of guys going down that I had seen when I watched their season. And lastly, I am pretty sure that Chuba Hubbard, I had seen reports that he was playing this season through some injuries, which granted everyone does. It's football, but apparently it was more than just, your average nicks and bruises. So I like Jake. I'm still pretty high on Chuba Hubbard. I was thinking about taking him at 13 over Terrence Marshall Jr. So
you're gonna take him at 13?
That's too high for me.
I don't understand. I think there's a clear argument to be made that he's RB4.
Yeah, I mean, I took him as the RB4, and RB4 at 206 is just really low. So just to say he couldn't go, but over all the 5 receivers that just went before him, I think is a little ignorant, just because the running back position is so valuable in fantasy football, and obviously this class isn't as loaded at running back as the previous class, where we saw the Cam Akers and Clyde Edwards-Helaire and Jonathan Taylor and all those guys, congrats to them, and that's probably why Chuba Hubbard ended up staying in school for an extra year. And I understand that's a concern, but this year is just a fluke year. And like Frank said, he still broke a lot of tackles, even behind a very bad offensive line and a lot of issues going on at Oklahoma State in a weird COVID year. Don't overthink this. He's a very talented running back.
Well, I just happen to have a couple of other running backs ahead of him. And one of them is who I'm going to pick at this spot, which is pick number 19. He's now RB5 off the board. Personally, I do have him as RB4 above Chuba Hubbard. And that's Kenneth Gainwell. He's a running back from Memphis. And, if you're saying there, you don't really follow college football a lot, like you might be thinking Memphis, like what's going on with Memphis? But believe it or not, Memphis in the past couple of years has churned out running backs like crazy. You got Tony Pollard, who is now looking very strong on the Dallas Cowboys. He's starting to eat into Zeke's shares and has proven that he can perform without Zeke. Darrell Henderson from the Rams, he went to Memphis. And most notably recently was Antonio Gibson, who is now breaking out on the Washington football team and looking like, he's probably a second most valuable player on the team next to Terry McLaurin. And might even be rivaling him soon for the number one spot for most valuable from Washington. So, that's just part of the story about Kenneth Gainwell, but it gives you a little idea of what's going on here. He's got really good hands. I think he might have my favorite hands out of the draft for a running back at least. I like him and, Trey Sermon, but Trey Sermon's just kind of questionable for me. I think we could talk about him later. He just kind of seems almost sorry if this offends anyone. I don't know if it would be offensive, but like bipolar with kind of how he plays. Like, one game you might see him play one way and different, but I digress. Kenneth Gainwell, I like him in kind of a pass catching role. So if you're in a PPR, half point PPR, I think at, near the late, mid to getting towards late part of the second round, this is a solid spot to go and draft that kind of running back to take a flyer on. You might have to wait a little bit for him to get that kind of opportunity to really cement himself into an NFL role. But I think the upside is there, and that's what I'm taking with this pick.
Yeah, just to add a little bit more on Kenneth Gainwell, because I was kind of pissed off that you took him one pick before I went twice, is that Kenneth Gainwell is easily 100% the best receiving back in this draft class. I don't think it's going to be close because I haven't finished all the running backs yet, but dude, this is why. Kenneth Gainwell, I legitimately believe could make it to the NFL as a receiver if he wasn't a running back. Like, this guy is legit. The routes that Memphis asked him to run, kind of similar to Antonio Gibson last year, but I think with Kenneth Gainwell, they even took it further, is that they were asking this guy to run routes way down the field consistently. Like, I was seeing this guy running corner routes and just crazy stuff. The route tree is just off the charts for Gainwell. And the other thing, I have him right now pro comp to Tiki Barber, is that he's got that electric part about him. He's shifty, really tough to bring down. I think overall, like, he's just a running back that if you were an NFL coach, you just want him on your team. He's a smaller back, but my God, he plays super hard, and he seems like one of those versatile guys that'll do anything you ask him to do. So for me, I am picking at pick 20 now in the second.
Frank, 1 second, real quick. Where do you think Kenneth Gainwell ends up getting drafted, like round wise, kind of?
I have him right now as an NFL grade mid third round pick.
Right. Late second, early third is what I'd say for him as well.
I think for me, it's tough because he hasn't played and we didn't get to see the tape from this year, which is really unfortunate. And I do think that there are some concerns with him, like, when you compare him to someone like Naji Harris, workload it could be considered a factor, right? Like, Kenneth Gainwell's not a guy that I want to be handing the ball off to 23 times a game necessarily. Not that I don't want to give him the ball 23 times. It's just if I'm a system that's just trying to base my scheme around, I want multiple tight ends on the field, I want to pound the rock, Kenneth Gainwell is not the guy I'm taking. But in this modern NFL, like, Kenneth Gainwell can now become a number one running back because of what the NFL is becoming, right? Kenneth Gainwell is the kind of guy that I can line up and in a 5-wide set, and I'm going to be comfortable with him as a receiver, which is I feel like really interesting. And man, he's just so electric when you get the ball in his hands. Like you talk about Etienne being dangerous in the open field. Like Kenneth Gainwell's quickness and agility is on an elite level, and I think even better than someone like Etienne. He's not as powerful as Etienne. Etienne's the kind of guy that when his shoulders are square to you as a defender, or he has better leverage than a defender, he's just so physically gifted, he'll get by him. But Kenneth Gainwell's the kind of guy that a defender can have better leverage or be in a better position, but he is so quick that he creates yards for himself that way, on top of being like underratedly powerful. But enough of Kenneth Gainwell. Let's go into my 20th pick, and that's Pat Freiermuth from Penn State. I personally haven't gotten around to a lot of the tight ends yet, so I am not extremely well versed in Freiermuth. I don't know a lot. I have not done any in-depth study on him, but according to consensus, this guy is legit. I have seen in other mocks where he's even gone in the first round in a tight end premium league, which I found a little crazy just because I don't think he's going to end up being as good as Kyle Pitts. But Pat Freiermuth, if you guys have anything to add about him, I'd love to hear of it. But apparently this guy is a freaking beast, and I am pretty excited to watch him when I get around to him.
Yeah.
I really like the prospect of Pat here. He's a good blocking tight end, good pass catching tight end. He's going to be on the field all the time, which is something you look for in your tight end. Coming into the season, he was the consensus number one tight end in this draft class before Kyle Pitts just had an unbelievable season and rightfully taken that spot from him. But Pat Freiermuth in a tight end premium league at the end of the second round here is an unbelievable value, and he probably will be a consistent top 10 tight end for years to come, which obviously, like we've said in the past, is not that difficult. It's just going to require a few touchdowns and about 500 yards or so. But he will do that for sure, and he has the upside to be even better.
Yeah, so first, I think it's Freiermuth is how you pronounce it. And I kind of agree with you guys in that regard. It's difficult to take a tight end early if you're not convinced on him, just because it takes a while for them to actually go and hit breakouts. But admittedly, he probably should be higher up in our Superflex draft. I just kind of
probably have a mid-second.
Yeah, he admittedly probably should be a little higher.
Yeah, I'm going off the assumption that I do believe that Freiermuth will be around the first round. I'm going to assume real quick that he's a first round pick in the NFL. Maybe he's not, and he's in that early second round range. The value of the tight end position in the NFL has been skyrocketing recently. Especially when you're seeing what teams like the Browns do, where they're constantly in 3 tight end sets. In a big power formation with guys like Nick Chubb and then a giant receiver and Donovan Peoples-Jones, and then they'll go and line up 5 wide and pass the ball on you. Like Freiermuth, if he is a beast, then he's probably going to be around that first round, early second round pick. And in a tight end premium league, you really don't have to do anything crazy to put up good numbers. I just need 5 catches, 45, 50 yards. You put up a touchdown, you have a great day, And if he's a first round pick, man, like getting that at the end of the second round, towards the end of the second round, is great value. Now, my next pick 21, is a guy that I have been watching, and that's Jermar Jefferson out of Oregon State. This is a guy, you talk about, a speedy running back. This guy has got wheels. He's one of those, from what I've seen thus far, one of those big play kind of running backs. How I like to describe him is, what I wrote down is that whenever you give him the ball, it almost feels like you're holding your breath a little bit if you're a defense, because you just don't know, any play he could just take it and gash you from the weirdest angles. And Jermar Jefferson, I want to watch more of him. He's a guy that is just super interesting. As a true freshman, he put up like 1,300 yards. He had a crazy year. He has had some injuries here and there the past couple of seasons, but this is a guy that, for his talent level, I'm just not sure you can pass up on him when you're picking at the end of the second round, especially with what we've seen rookie running backs can do. for your fantasy football team?
Yeah, I'm a big fan of Jermar Jefferson, and if you really want that hype, just go watch his game against Oregon. He kind of just torched them and just was running all over them. It's very promising, and getting him at the late second is nice. Now, someone that I am not too high on, but kind of feel like I have to take him at this point is Mac Jones, quarterback 6. He so everyone kind of knows who Mac Jones is, right? He's a senior at Alabama. Went off, won the national championship. Kind of unexpected, like he was behind Tua last year. Tua got hurt and he kind of filled in and did okay, but was much better this year. I'm just worried though about Mac Jones. Like Frank said it earlier, like behind easily the best offensive line in the nation. He's got some of the best wide receiver talent. The offense wasn't really necessarily schemed for him to make many difficult throws. Like he didn't have to really ever go out and win you the game for Alabama. It's always been pretty comfortable. That being said, he still did look pretty good, and I think if he's not a first round pick, he will likely be drafted in the second round. So at the late second, I feel like it's justifiable to go out and draft the quarterback 6 off the board. He might even be quarterback 5 ahead of Kyle Trask. We'll see how the NFL shapes up. But getting that guy and just kind of taking a flyer on him is incredible because we've seen what happens when you do go and draft a quarterback in the second or third round in your rookie draft. Just last year with Jalen Hurts. Jalen Hurts, no one really expected him to fill in for Carson Wentz, and when he did, and he played, pretty decent against the Saints and Cardinals, his value skyrocketed to where you could have traded him for a first plus. Probably not so much right now, but you could have earlier. And getting that kind of player in the second to third round is just an easy way to just gain value like that in Dynasty, and that's kind of something that you need to be doing if you want to really build a Dynasty team. So at this late pick, I do feel comfortable taking Mac Jones. I don't love the player, but if he works, he works. And, it's hard to deny someone who's going to be drafted in the first 2 rounds in the actual NFL draft to not draft him in the first 2 rounds in a rookie mock draft.
So I want to ask a quick question real quick. And then who do you guys have as a higher rated prospect right now? Mac Jones or Jordan Love?
Mac Jones.
I think I'm gonna go Jordan Love. I mean, it's kind of full disclosure, I own Jordan Love in the.
I think Jordan Love has the higher ceiling. I feel safer with Mac Jones.
How about you, Jake?
Yeah, I mean, Mac Jones is probably the safer pick, but I think the physical tools and the arm strength that Jordan Love has is just superior here. And if he does get a chance to take over the Packers, maybe not. Obviously, won't be next year. Maybe the year after that, or if he ends up, somewhere else and Rodgers, outlasts him. I still think Jordan Love will get a shot eventually, and I believe in his talent. So I'll take the flyer on him, as his price is probably just going to continue to drop as he's not being a starter again next year.
Yeah, Mac Jones to me is just such an interesting prospect. I think that he's a kind of quarterback that landing spot, as of right now, would impact my valuation on him. If he's going to a team that I know can develop a quarterback and that has developed quarterbacks before, I will gladly take Mac Jones. I think that people are really underrating his arm talent right now. But, why I didn't pick him at 20 and 21 just now is just Pat Freiermuth, I can get a possible first round talent tight end that can really make an impact. Jermar Jefferson, a running back that just is insanely talented. I'm just not sure I am confident enough in Mac Jones to really warrant the pick over top prospects in other positions right now. I'm just not sure I've seen enough out of him in terms of making those difficult throws, those NFL level throws, those NFL open kind of throws where you have to fit into tight windows, control defenses. I felt like almost what Steve Sarkisian was doing at Alabama was controlling Mac Jones more so than Mac Jones was really controlling what defenses, controlling the defense and what Alabama was doing.
Yeah, that's fair, and that's kind of my thought process too. But when you could get someone like that in the late second
Yeah, it's
round,
good value. Like at the end of the second round, that's really good value, especially if he pans out. You're right. Like if he starts playing and shows some sort of promise his rookie year, he's instantly worth a first round pick.
yeah, we could be looking back on this rookie draft class, and he could definitely be, if we were to redraft him, he could end up being in the first round. Personally, I'm not as big of a fan, but I think consensus will have him being taken somewhere around, mid-second. So I just figured I'd draft him here. All right, moving on to the next pick. Only two picks left. Jake, pick 23.
I got here that I think is a super interesting prospect, a very, very talented guy. It is Thailand Wallace from Oklahoma State. He had an amazing, literally one of the best college football seasons as a wide receiver we've seen in a few years when he was a true sophomore. This was back in 2018. He had nearly 1,500 yards and 12 touchdowns. He added another rushing touchdown. He was exploded onto the scene as a true sophomore. He was a Bolitnikov finalist that year. And then he came out in his junior year and was putting up, roughly the same numbers, on pace for roughly the same numbers, and he tore his ACL, which was really unfortunate. Forced him to come back for his senior year after he looked like he was going to be a first-round prospect. But this year as a senior, in 10 games, he put up 922 yards and 6 more touchdowns on a bad Oklahoma State team. This guy is just a super talented receiver. I think he's only going to continue to get stronger from rehabbing from this ACL. And he's a guy that at the second to last pick in the second round, I think he has a real upside that a lot of guys around here won't have. So that's why I got him here, and I'm very happy with it.
Yeah, I'll speed this up real quick. Tylan Wallace is a guy that he's not going to wow you physically, but he is the kind of receiver that you just kind of throw the ball up to him and he'll come down with it. I almost want to call him the budget Mike Evans. I think that's a fair tag on Tylan Wallace, and at the end of the second round, he's a guy that I'm heavily targeting.
That's fair.
Yeah, I was kind of hoping that you wouldn't pick him there, but there's still another guy I liked. Now he's someone. My last pick 24, so 212. I'm taking. Jake's not a fan. JT is a fan. I'm taking Trey Sermon. We for the first half of the season, he was kind of just doing okay. He was splitting carries a lot with some other backs, but I think we all saw him blow up the last couple games, especially against Northwestern, where he went crazy and kind of Justin Fields was having a rough game, and he saved Ohio State's offense against Northwestern. He had 331 yards on 29 carries and 2 touchdowns, which that alone is insane. Then he followed that up with smacking Clemson with 31 for 193 and a touchdown. And I wish he didn't get injured in that national championship because I would have loved to see him go up against Bama's defense. But those last 2 performances he gave us, he went off. And also against Clemson, he also had another 4 catches for 61 receiving yards. He was making guys miss in open space. He's a very physical runner, not afraid of contact. I think landing spot is going to be extremely important for Sermon. I think depending on where he goes, what his fit is with the offense and the opportunities, that's going to be huge. I don't know for sure if I can call him an every down back yet, but he's definitely someone who can get, like, in a perfect world, like 15, 18 touches on an offense and kind of be a first, second down guy. I don't know yet about his receiving abilities fully, but at the end of the second round, I'll for sure take that and take the chance on him, especially with how he finished the season. I'm interested to see how he tests. But in the last pick of the second round, I thought he was the best prospect available. I wanted to get your guys.
I mean, at this pick, I was looking. If I were to have this one, I would look more at Diami Brown or Seth Williams. I just think they have a higher upside here than Trey Sermon, who I think is likely to end up as a part of some running back by committee and not a very high upside player here.
Yeah, there are
Yeah,
probably
you
some
know-
receivers that I would take. JT, you can go.
Well, I initially did like the pick. I do like Trey Sermon as a player, but Jake saying, mentioning Diami Brown and Seth Williams does make me start to question it now.
Bless you.
Thank you. Tried to mute myself.
No, and I get that. I'm just taking maybe there's some recency in there, but I really liked the way he ran. I thought he was running extremely physical against some tough defenses. And again, I really wish I could have seen him against Bama also, because that really would have been a good litmus test for him. Even though Ohio State fell behind early, so I don't know how many carries he would have gotten. But I don't think he's someone like the entire nation saw him just go off against Clemson. A lot of people just saw the Northwestern game. He ended up with a solid season. I can get his final season stats. It was 870 rushing yards and 4 rushing touchdowns on 116 attempts. Obviously, heavy majority of those at the end of the year. He's a big back. He's 6'1", 215. Again, not afraid of contact at all. He'll try to run over people. So I'm excited to see where he ends up, where he tests. And he's someone I'm definitely, if you told me I can get him 212, I'm taking that.
I got a couple feelings about Trey Sermon. I think JT put it best earlier in that he's very bipolar. You look at his beginning of the season to end of the season, it is just two completely different running backs. The other thing with Trey Sermon, he definitely has the opportunity to put on some more size, especially in his legs, kind of like Ronald Jones did from when he was a younger player and coming out until now. And now you've seen Ronald Jones basically transition from that almost like a home run hitter into a power in your face back. I think that Trey Sermon, not that he'd have to make a transition, but could put on another 10 pounds of weight and then be better than Ronald Jones is right now, especially because I do think that Trey Sermon is pretty decent coming out of the backfield. He's a guy, though, that it's gonna take a little bit for me to fall in love with him, drafting him without him just completely falling in a draft. He's not a guy that I'm targeting. I think that the inconsistencies that I've seen from him on tape are just going to kind of just nudge me away a little bit too much to the point where, like the other guys said, I'd rather take receivers over him. There are a couple tight ends that are starting to creep in. A guy that I watched and I like, Charlie Kolar from Iowa State. There's that kid from Miami that I think is all right. So it's just, for me to take him in the second round, it's going to take a lot, but I don't mind the pick too much. You know what, Lounis? This is the first pick besides like Trevor Lawrence that I could say, you know what? Good pick, buddy.
That's tough.
Najee Harris at 8 is good too, but
You
All
hate
right.
him.
Quick.
You didn't like Tony?
No,
Mid
that's
second.
all right. I don't know. I
I didn't like it.
I'm not a
No
huge
doubt.
Tony guy. I think that the consensus is a little bit higher on Kadarius Toney than I am right now.
I'd rather have Seth Williams and Diami Brown, who didn't make this mock draft, over Tony.
The other
Wow.
kid too, that kid from Ole Miss, the slot receiver, isn't on.
Elijah Moore.
Elijah Moore.
Yeah, Elijah Moore. He was someone
Yep.
that I was thinking about in those 2 second round picks I had that could easily be in the second round in a mock draft.
Yeah, second round wide receivers.
Those guys aren't putting up 8 for 150 against Bama. Let me tell you something.
Sure, but I still don't love
All right.
it. I'm sorry. Oh, also another one would be Brevin Jordan, tight end. I think
Yeah, that's the guy from Miami
that's the
that
kid from
Frank
Miami.
was talking about. Yeah.
Oh yeah, sorry, forgot about that. All right.
Tamarian Terry
my
from
guy.
Florida State could easily be in here. I liked his tape a little bit.
They're gonna be. This is a deep draft. I feel like in recent years you're kind of scraping the bottom of the barrel when you get to late second, early third. But in this one, I feel like you're still maintaining value and players that likely aren't going to be roster cloggers and actually could see time in your starting lineup, which is rare. So it's something to get excited about. It's something to keep looking forward to. Anything else you guys got to add before we just wrap this up?
Fuck you, Lounis.
I got two guys waiting to prove me that I'm a genius. Jalen Waddle and Kadarius Toney cannot let me down, and I guess Trask too. I'll throw in there.
Listen,
I'm
I
riding
never
the
said I
tide.
hated
Yeah.
these guys. It's just, geez,
We liked other people. Yeah, we like other people.
we liked
better.
other guys more.
Well, Jalen Waddle.
I'm riding him down.
All right. So thank you for listening to the second edition of the 3rd and 20 Dynasty Mock Draft, Superflex Tight End Premium. Please make sure to like, subscribe, comment. You could call Lounis a clown. Clown emojis would be nice. That would be kind of fun.
Or agree with me.
If you agree,
Be on the right side.
if you agree, maybe go.
Be on
If
the
you
right
agree,
side.
maybe we want you on a different channel. Maybe you could go watch someone else.
Be on the
3rd and 20 Lounis takes.
Yeah. We'll have you guys go Lounis' channel. But all right. I think that's it. I think we're good. Everyone's good.
Yep. Peace out, guys.
Yep,
Thanks for
thanks,
watching.
guys.